Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting. Today is Tuesday, October the 18th, 2022. The time is now 6 p.m. The regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Trinidad will now come to order by Zoom as well as in person. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Williamson, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a roll call, please.
DeBono?
Here.
Griego?
Here.
Ogletree? Here. Shu?
Here.
Thurman?
Here.
Williamson?
Present.
Rico?
Here. Item 2, approval of the agenda. Anybody in council wants to make any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Call the vote.
DeBono?
Yes.
Griego?
Yes.
Ogletree?
Yes.
Shu?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes.
Williamson?
Yes.
Rico?
Yes. Policy items, staff reports. Mr. Ruger, do you have anything tonight?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Item 4, petitions or communications are all written. Mr. H.L. Bowman?
Good evening, council members. Welcome, City Manager Ruger, Mayor Rico. For you that don't know me, my name is H.L. Bowman. I'm first a citizen, taxpayer, landowner, and homeowner, both in the city and county. I am the Los Animas County Republican Chairman, House District 47 Chairman, and that represents 9 counties, along with Vice Chairman of Senate District 35. Yesterday, October 17th, I made a call to the state informing them who I was and what I would like to be, that I would like to be contacted if any of my candidates had any signs illegally posted on state land, as well as right-of-ways. The gentleman that I spoke to was very kind and appreciated my concern of getting this resolved. I explained to him that I understood how busy they are, and this should not fall on the burden of the taxpayer. So to please call me if there were any problems, and I would address them. As we all know, election tampering, candidate finance, and placing signs are very serious and recognized both federally, state, and locally. Refer to Colorado Statute, Section Title I, Elections 1-13-701 and 1-13-111. Penalties include serious fines along with imprisonment. Yesterday, October 17th, at around 12:30, I also made a call to Mayor Rico and explained to him the same things that I explained to the state, in which he responded that he would address it and let me know if any of my candidates had not followed any electioneering laws. I thanked him and explained to him the same thing, that it shouldn't be on the burden of the taxpayer to take these signs down, and that the candidate, along with the party, should be responsible. We said goodbye, and you can clearly hear agitation in his tone and demeanor. About 20 minutes later, the police code enforcement is at my residence. I was not home. Officer Richard Gonzalez, Officer Chris Smith were there. Officer Gonzalez then called me after soliciting my number from my cousin. I was actually already on my way home and told him that I would be right there. Upon arriving, I was informed that they were responding to a complaint of my weeds being too tall. I told him that I would take care of it. Last Tuesday or Wednesday, I had contacted Mr. Rossetti concerning the weeds and had explained to him that when they brought new dirt to redo the sidewalks, and I had a couple different weeds that had never dealt with before, and the normal poisons, Roundup, 2,4-D, had no effect on them. I have some pictures if anybody wants to see those. I asked Mr. Rossetti if there was anything he knew of to address this, and he suggested I call Bob Just. After calling Bob Just that day and leaving a message at his office, I didn't hear back from him. So on Thursday, I called his personal cell phone, in which he answered. The basic ending to our conversation was to contact the city manager, Mr. Ruger. At that point, I called and was informed that he was not in, and so I asked to be forwarded to his voicemail. I left a message, then called a couple more times and left a message. Mr. Ruger did call me back this morning and we had a meeting this afternoon in which I expressed my concerns and deep regret that he was having to even deal with this situation. He was fully aware of the situation and was just as surprised as I was of Mayor Rico's behavior. Mayor Rico also admitted to Mr. Ruger that he had called Charlie Glorioso, Chief of Police. Yesterday, after police code enforcement had left, I just looked around at all my neighbors along with 2 separate city properties and realized that I wasn't the only one. So I decided to converse with my neighbors and ask them if anybody else has been contacted by the police code enforcement. Not one of them had been contacted. At that point, I was pretty upset and bothered that I was being harassed and singled out. At that point, I called Mayor Rico, and the first words out of my mouth were, "Are you freaking kidding me? You're really going to weaponize the police department against me?" In which he responded, "I called Charlie because we need to get those weeds taken care of." I told Mayor Rico that I don't believe this, and he should be ashamed of himself to use his position to harass someone and retaliate. He then said, "I am a Democrat and aren't endorsing any candidates." That's when I said, "So that's what this is about. Some more devious bullshit."
1 minute, sir. Sorry.
I've got someone else's minutes that were approved.
Okay, you have 1 minute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Democrats are endorsing other candidates. That's when I said that this is some more bullshit. I then told him that I was going to tie the city up in so much litigation that he would feel it. He kept repeatedly saying, "I'm sorry, HL, I'm sorry." At that point, I hung up. I'm sure there was some cuss words also inserted, but wanted to be respectful of the public and council. When I called, I made sure to have 2 witnesses to the conversation, which both heard everything that Mayor Rico said, along with what I said. My understanding of the city charter is that city council, along with the mayor, are not allowed to direct city employees. They are supposed to communicate with the city manager for concerns. Immediately following this conversation, I contacted my attorney, in which I was told to file a complaint with the Department of Justice, which has been filed. After that call, I contacted the state GOP and explained to them that as Los Angeles County Chairman, I was just targeted and harassed over calling the mayor to address broken electioneering laws. After which I was informed they would have to visit with the Republican state attorney and to keep them updated of all actions after this point. I'm still really saddened by what took place yesterday, that an elected official would abuse his power based on, I'm not sure if this is a political or racial based on me being Native American. I've never been so targeted. I myself initially wanted to call for Mayor Rico's resignation, but was urged by my attorney to leave this to council to determine the violation of ethics. It scares me that an elected official would go rogue and jeopardize the city of possible lawsuit for harassment, racial, or political bias, along with discrimination and retaliation.
Mr. Bowman, I'm sorry. That's been 6 minutes, sir.
Okay,
Okay, sorry.
I got it.
If you would please just conclude.
Okay.
Okay.
I urge council to take this matter serious and would like to put on record that myself and attorney would like to be involved in the process as well as notified. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mike Yocum?
Wow, this is going to be super tame after that. I'm just going to recount a quick story. And I was telling Aaron previously, hopefully it'll be the last time you guys have to hear a story like this. I was contacted I contacted a solar company in January of this year, and we were planning on putting collectors on our home. We signed a contract in February. I was recontacted in April saying they had the state permits and they were still waiting for the city of Trinidad to kind of clear up their net metering policy. They said it was opaque, which sounded sort of like a term you would use if no one was giving you an answer. And they asked me if I could help, maybe rattle some cages, see what I could find out. And I did. I started making phone calls. I couldn't find out anything. This is back when Mike Valentine was in office. I called him a minimum of 10 times and was never responded to. Make a long story short, they terminated our contract 2 weeks ago. They said they could not work down here effectively because the policy making was not clear and it just wasn't lucrative enough for them. So I'm asking for whomever help is required to try to sort out the net metering policy for photovoltaics in town so that we can put collectors up on our houses. And it makes sense from a net metering policy that it's very difficult to put collectors on your house if you don't have a battery, which is another 10,000. And I think a lot more people would be inclined to put collectors on their home if there was at least monthly net metering, if not annual net metering. That's it in a nutshell.
I think, have you gone with Mr. Ruger to see if?
No, not yet.
No, I have not. We've never visited, and I've never met. And I'm not even, Steve, is it you I should be visiting with?
Yeah, if you want to call the city manager's office, we can get an appointment set up.
Okay, how does Power and Light fit into all this?
So they are an enterprise of the organization, but they are a branch of the city organization, and they operate under their own ordinance. So any changes to solar would have to be contemplated in an ordinance amendment and brought to the city council for their approval.
Okay,
So we usually don't have a question and answer session. I'm
Right.
sorry, this is for
No.
you to please speak.
That's-
I don't mean to be the rule.
no, I was made aware of that, and
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your addressing that, and I'll get in touch with you.
Please do.
Thank you.
sir.
Mr. Brad Kirby?
Hello, Mayor, City Council.
Hey.
My name's Eric. Let me get you to pass those down. I'm here speaking for Sean Potts. He has a little marijuana farm outside of town, or in town. And lately, the taxes have been raised on it, and taxes lowered on other people. And so he just wants y'all to review the way y'all set it up, and wants to see if you can change that back to where it was, or just review it differently. The way you can take your taxes as far as when we sell a pound of marijuana is on what the projected pound should cost, or what we should sell it for. But we don't always sell it for that, so we want you to sell, or tax us for what we actually sell, the income that we make off of, not just per pound. So there's a little list there for y'all to look at. Sean Potts is not able to make it tonight, so if y'all would like to call him and give it to him, he has a little bit more detail about this. But if y'all can just kind of look at the way you do your taxes.
Well, I think that would, Mr. Ruger,
Yeah,
would you contact Mr. Potts and talk to him about it?
absolutely.
Okay,
Be happy to.
All right, thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Mr. Jerry Peters?
I gave HL,
Do what? You can't do that.
You have to
Yeah.
show me the street.
Let's move on. Mr. Murphy?
I'm good.
Okay. On to item 5, consent agenda approval. 5A, approval of the regular meeting minutes of October the 4th, 2022. Item B, approval of the bills in the amount of $1,433,904.42. Item C, of the payroll, October the 15th, 2022 through October the 28th, 2022, in the amount of $422,333.51. Entertain a motion? Second?
Second.
Call roll?
DeBono?
Yes.
Griego?
Yes.
Ogletree?
Yes.
Shu?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes.
Williamson?
Yes.
Rico?
Yes. Item 6, public hearings. 6A, capital budget estimates. Hearing is now open. The capital budget estimates for this year are $12,138,719. Mr. Ruger or Cheryl,
Mr. Mayor,
you
yeah.
want to address, please?
There was a dramatic pause. Good evening.
As we are presenting the capital budget, as the mayor said, $12,138,719. This is the preliminary presentation. As discussed at our work session last week, council was made aware of projects that are coming online. There have been no changes to date. We're still sharpening our pencils and going through to find out where we're going to actually end up at the end of the year. But at this point, we're at $12,138,000, and I anticipate a few changes here and there when we present the first reading of the budget.
Okay. Mr. Ruger, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Mayor, no.
Okay. Council, do you have anything to add to this? Any questions on the capital budget? Any questions?
No.
Anybody in-house or listening in have any comment on the capital budget? Hearing none? Hearing's closed. Item 6B, public hearing. 6B is a 2023 annual budget. Hearing is now open. Cheryl?
As discussed in our previous work session, the preliminary budget still stands. We did have some corrections. Certain line items were posted to the wrong line item, but I did correct those. We have not made any final or any changes that would change the final balance of what was presented to council at the work session. And we will anticipate changes from now until the final reading, or first and final reading of the budget. We're just getting into those final numbers. We'll be tweaking the budget as is.
And for everybody's information, that current budget stands at $48,230,244. And of course, like Cheryl says, is that we're still waiting for the negotiations with the unions to see where we end up at. So, council, do you have any further questions?
I have a question just for timing. So when we do the negotiations with the unions, is that done in a timely fashion so we can adjust, or do we have to adjust the budget after we accept it for?
No, we would go through, we would not present the final until the negotiations are completed. Yes.
So the timing is good there.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
And that 91,000 that were to the good, that still stands?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, we may have found another 50,000, but don't count on it. We're still waiting. But yes, we're
Okay.
thinking positively, yes.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
You have a question?
Yeah, I did. At the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, they came up with a budget for next year, and I was trying to figure out where do those budgets fall in the budget that it's only $22,000, but where do they fall in
The
here?
boards and commissions present through marijuana allocation.
Okay.
So they will, I'm collecting their budgets now, and they'll be presented for third quarter marijuana, which will probably be the first, we'll probably have the work session, the first meeting in November, and then present the resolution at the second meeting of November.
Okay.
Yes.
Other than what we talked about at the work session, I don't have any other questions.
Any questions?
I have questions.
I hope I can articulate this clearly. As it stands currently, what percentage of last year's budget is, this current year's budget is next year's budget?
So I have that in my notes because I was, let me think.
Sorry for on the spot, I know.
Percentage of decrease.
Oh, okay. I do have it, just a sec.
Yeah.
Right.
She has it?
That's right.
I was working to show how prepared she was.
Cheryl's always prepared.
Exactly.
So we have a decrease in the budget of about 15.5%. Yeah, last, council approved the budget last year of $56,943,000, and now we're down to the $48,230.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Yes, sure.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Anyone listening in or in-house want to have any questions concerning the proposed budget at this point in time? Hearing none? Hearing is closed. Item 7, unfinished business. We have none. Item 8, miscellaneous business. Consideration of reappointment of Tony Marderon to the Planning and Zoning and Variance Commission. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Marderano, I'm not sure if he's here tonight.
No.
Any questions concerning the reappointment?
He does a good job.
Okay, any other questions? None? Okay, call the vote, please.
DeBono?
Yes.
Griego?
Yes.
Ogletree?
Yes.
Shu?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes.
Williamson?
Yes.
Rico?
Yes. Item 8B, consideration of appointment of Carlos Madrid to the Historic Preservation Commission. Mr. Madrid, are you in today? Thank you for coming. Entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Do you have anything that you need to add to, for the
No,
consideration?
I'm just willing to help grow the historic preservation of the area. I definitely have some things I want to get preserved, so I have a little schedule of stuff I want to get done, but I'm excited to join the commission.
And I think you showed that you had some past experience, correct?
Yeah, I've been a land surveyor for the past, I think it was like 15 years or so. So I have a lot of experience in historic record research. So I've done a lot of that, and I found a lot of historical records in this area that I definitely want to get into the public and try to get preserved.
Okay, good. Thank you for applying for the position.
Sure.
Council, do you have any questions for Commissioner Gray?
Just thank you for your input, and I'm sure it'll be very valuable.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Okay.
interest.
There's no further questions. Call the vote, please.
DeBono?
Yes.
Griego?
Yes.
Ogletree?
Yes.
Shu?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes.
Williamson?
Yes.
Rico?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Madrid.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Item C, consideration of preliminary plat for the Peters subdivision. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Hall, what do you have?
Oh, I didn't know if I needed to come up and explain the
Yeah.
proposed map or not.
Is anybody from Peters
Yes.
Enterprise subdivision here?
She certainly is.
Hi, Council. I'm Tim Peters. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is the preliminary subdivision plat that Tim Peters has brought to us, and basically it's, 58.65 acres, and our planning, zoning, and variance commission went through and reviewed his application. Basically, he's moving parcels around. He has some, as seen here, these parcels are going to move down the lot line.
Do you want to raise that up a little bit? You can, with,
I don't have
I think-
Chris, it's up there.
There it is.
Yay.
So he had some existing 3 parcels, and he's moved the lot lines to different sections of this map. Still moving. And so these 2 parcels right down here are,
Does that correlate to the one we have in our packet?
yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
And it's on page 6. I'm sorry, I don't only have 1 copy. Terry Surveying is no longer in business. But here is the 2 plots that actually have access to city utilities, and I believe Mr. Peters' intention is to eventually sell those plots, and then he'll have his residence in this area with a garage in this area, and he's bringing water up to his residence at his expense. He's already applied for a permit for this area, and he's getting, is the sewer in yet? Yeah, septic system is in right here, so it's been addressed as 1901 Garfield. He's also granted the city a row agreed easement right here
along Garfield that has utilities. And this is actually also going to be for further expansion. So this will be deeded to the city in this area right here.
And we have sewer up there. That
Eventually-
comes out of that one corner over there by,
Yeah, I
Where-
believe the sewer and all the utilities are down in this area. And then Mr. Peters is bringing water up, so he'll have water in this area. As you know, it's really rocky and
But no,
It's
but not sewer.
Yeah.
Sewer is along Saddle Road, it looks like that's,
yes,
Where the
it's
sewer's at.
existing down here.
right.
yeah.
And that'll be good for these two parcels because they can access the sewer a lot easier than Mr. Peters can.
Okay.
And I just wanted to add that the Planning, Zoning, and Variance Commission heard the application on October 11th. And they had recommendations for approval. And they did ask that we waive major subdivision development requirements as not to be an undue burden of requiring Mr. Peters to install concrete roadways, sidewalks, or consider preparation of trails at this time. So we're not holding Mr. Peters to a full subdivision requirement
And that's at this time.
for
right,
one,
right,
yeah, for one
right,
resident,
At this point in time.
right?
But at some point in time, you'll probably consider doing that, Tim?
Maybe. Right now, one house on 50 acres.
Because you have, like I said, the biggest parcel is adjacent to the road coming down toward town. Okay. And I can see that reason for that, that's a pretty big area. Questions from council?
Was there any stipulations by planning and zoning of Mr. Peters for this, or it was just granted as is?
There is in the full report that Mr. Peters is going to provide the deeded portion of the property to the city of
And that's the
Trinidad.
only,
And that should be before the final plat.
What else is entailed with the road maintenance agreement with the Trinidad Fire Department? Is that with,
That, the chief required that we put in this road, was it the chief or water?
It was a combination of both.
Okay,
To
yeah.
extend the main on the city right-of-ways and to keep it away from power lines and in conjunction with future development. Yeah, we had to move it over, and I'm giving them a road easement to get to it, to maintain it, to, hell yeah, I want the fire department to get it. Come on. I'm putting in probably 850 feet of 6-inch water line, and that entails also 2 fire hydrants. Just following the codes, you know.
I was just gonna ask you about the fire
Yes.
hydrant.
So we've got that all worked out. Everybody worked it out.
The chief has been there several times and driven around.
Driven
On
around
the
with the
roads.
fire trucks, and they loved it, so they were fine.
Other questions?
I had some questions, Mr. Peters. What, the other 2 parcels that it sounds like you're intending to sell them from your statement that you put in the file. What will the people who buy those parcels have to do? Will they be required to do the subdivision, the things like the sidewalks and trails and all that? Is that?
That's up to them at that point in time.
Okay, but
There's
we're waiving
nothing
it,
there.
we're waiving it now for you, and so I'm just wondering, does that then go with the next attempt at developing those properties?
Our current code is according to acreage, and we wouldn't hold them to the same requirements. We might with track 2.
Okay, so are those lots, are they splittable? I mean, what's the zoning, what does the minimum
Well,
lot size?
currently it's
indicate?
residential estates.
Okay, but I'm wondering, one of them is 9.56 acres, so that could probably be split into smaller parcels, and would that be another subdivision then, that we would be looking for somebody to do those things?
It's up to the intent of whoever purchases.
Okay. I just want to know why we're not requiring it here when we would be requiring it in other subdivisions.
If Mr. Peters had brought us multiple residences, we certainly would require him, like if he was putting in infrastructure, it would be a mandatory requirement that he follow all of these. But it just doesn't make sense to hold Mr. Peters to follow.
Is there another way it could be done, like a lot split or something like that, so that it's not a subdivision? Because if we're saying this is a subdivision, it seems like it should have the things that a subdivision has.
Right, and it's very hard to hold him to it because it's not really a subdivision. It's a big parcel of land that you don't come across this most times. It's mostly just small parcels, and this is, it's suitable for a subdivision. That's why we hold them to the requirements, but we're hoping to change our code to make it more digestible because this is according to acreage, and we need to really look at it to see if we can make it more digestible for developers and those that want to develop.
Mr. Peters, on the lower end down there, on
Okay.
the lower part, that's off of Saddle Road, right? The
Yes.
lower section?
I believe it is.
Yeah, those are the acreage you're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah, those would be pretty hard to subdivision the way the road, the canyon is there.
Yeah, I
that
should have
would-
brought the other map
Yeah,
that
it's
shows the
real different.
contours. It's a very rocky area.
Yeah. You
And that,
couldn't,
that was the natural place because of the arroyo.
Right.
That's why that one's triangular,
yeah.
because it follows the arroyo.
Yeah.
I actually kept those property lines maybe 100 feet, 150 feet away from the arroyo, because I don't want anyone ever to touch it.
Yeah.
So it's just moved.
Yeah.
That's why that one's triangular and it's 9.5. The other one's nice little cutoff lot too, but look, I'm about to pay 900 feet of city water
Oh,
line.
yeah.
And
No, we
here,
understand.
water line, so it's a trade-off, so I'm just
Yeah,
trading.
I think that's a good deal.
You know.
Question?
I just wanted to wrap up, what my concern is that it just seems like what we're saying to you, Mr. Peters, is that we're waiving these things and that we might request them later. I just don't understand how that works. I'm just concerned that someone's gonna come in down the road, one of your, a person who wants to develop it, and say, well, why wasn't this done before, and come back to the city and, well,
At the second reading or the final plat, if anything changes, it possibly could. We could hold them, but the Planning, Zoning and Variance Commission asked that we didn't, and they agreed with these, that we could skip over a lot of this stuff that we
Sounds
hold
like
developers to.
what you think is that we need to look at our zoning code and straighten this out when it's a large,
Which is
large
coming
acreage.
very soon.
Okay,
Yeah, we're going to look at it in the coming 2 months.
it sounds like it is something that.
It's going to be redeveloped and proposed.
Okay.
See if we can look at it and make it more digestible for developers.
Okay, great.
Councilman Ogletree, I started this off to do one house on that property.
I think
One house on
that-
60 acres, and a bunch of things were not plotted in the past. We got it all together. They charged me for one house, just because it's a big property. They charged me and act like it's a major subdivision. That makes no sense. And it is a problem in our codes. You can't say anything over 5 acres is a major subdivision. It made no sense,
I'm glad that this brought this to a head, because I wasn't aware of that, so.
Yeah, I've been dealing with that for a long time, and it's just,
He's been very patient with us
In
while we
2007, I wanted to put 14 houses in, and we had it all set up, and they were calling it a major subdivision. Basically, you can't pull off financing on it. So now, here I am. I'm gonna do one house, and they tag it as a major subdivision. I pay the major subdivision fees and do that. We get 2 months, 3 months going through this process. It's like, yeah, something doesn't fit. This rule doesn't work. So, but you're gonna look at it, I think, so that's what's going on. That's the issue.
Other questions?
It seems like it's in the in-between stage of subdivision and personal property, so. Just thanks for Aaron for answering that
Yeah.
question.
No problem.
I think this definitely warrants, on
a larger scale, especially if it entails other location warrants a lot of discussion, so I'm glad that that's happening. In our packet, it's recommended for approval. Other than P and Z, what other vetting has it gone through?
Well, it went through our development team numerous times, which is everybody from every department, and it's engineering, and Michael Yerman, the contracted planning and zoning guy, he's looked at it, he vetted it, I said, does this carry, because I don't want to hold Mr. Peters, to undue stress. So he looked at it and he said it made sense. I mean, if you look at what we would hold him to as far as testing, it just yeah.
So in I forget the way it was phrased, but in removing the requirements for a major subdivision, what are the mechanics of removing those requirements? How is that accomplished? And if it's ever would make sense to put them back in, is it possible to put them back in?
Yeah, at the time of application, when he reapplies for his final plat, when he has his plans in and we have more ideas of what he's trying to do, I mean, we have a pretty good idea, but until we see those engineered plans, we can't make any determination on anything.
Mr. Downs, would there pose any problems of the after effect on that, like she was asking? I'm not sure if you want to repeat that about.
I was curious as to the mechanism of how those requirements are removed, and if it became necessary, how it would be possible for them to be reinstated.
If I understand the question correctly, I think you're talking about like code changes, right? I mean,
yeah.
And then if it doesn't work, changing the code back again.
Well, so removing those requirements.
Here's the requirements that he's.
Well,
would that be a code
I
change?
appreciate it. I mean, you're talking about code requirements, right?
No.
No, the requirements that would be placed on the builder if it was a normal subdivision. You said
Well, and I don't mean to interrupt, we want consistency, of course, in requirements for all developers, so everybody knows
right.
what is going to be required of them and treat them all the same. And so any changes that we would make, council could discuss and make those changes. I don't know what it is you're talking about changing. If it's requirements for a developer with a development, if I understand correctly, then those, I think, would be code changes.
I don't know how we're not aware of what changes I'm discussing, because in your presentation you said it's been the recommendation of P&Z to remove the requirements for a major subdivision, correct?
We'll hold them, hold them.
Those are the requirements I'm referring to.
We're not gonna hold him to all of these requirements right here, but we have made him subject to these that make sense.
So
we vetted these out and yes, it
that's
doesn't
what I'm
make sense
interested in, is what
we're
the
not
mechanism.
trying to change the code or anything, but we're trying to live by it.
I understand that, but my question is, what is the mechanism of saying he's not bound by these? and is
Engineering
bound by
reviews of what we have thus far. All we have is a proposal and a map. We don't yet have the plans to determine what requirements to hold him to.
those? Okay.
And I don't, and planning and zoning didn't foresee any changes for what Mr. Peters proposed. It's just one house.
Okay.
We wouldn't require him to put infrastructure in like roads or
And I want to be
sidewalks.
clear, it's not that I oppose it, I just want to understand it. The last question I
And if we
had.
had roads and sidewalks, we would require these because we can't propose building without it.
So I guess as we proceed, things will be clearer.
Right.
Okay. The last question I had is, actually, I'll wait. I have no further questions. Well,
And our question to ask, a little bit to help you with that, is our planning board went by what the codes are, and that's why we have a board. to do approving for planning and that. So if it's all right with them, that's why we have the board,
Oh, no,
then it should be
yeah,
fine with the requirements.
I
Yeah, they
understand.
didn't
I was
want-
curious as to
They're
what the
actually
mechanism was.
wanting to keep it,
Right.
Mr.
Simple.
Peters, you know, the requirements off of Mr. Peters because of what this is.
So I have a question in conjunction with what you're saying. So we're waiving some of the requirements of the subdivision because there's only one house. So what happens 5 years down the road and Mr. Peter decides to develop that subdivision? Is there a legal mechanism within the city that we can reverse that and then require him to do the roads and
Well, the
Or is
normal
it set?
process is for Mr. Peters to bring his plans to us, and we propose a final plat, just as we did with the hospital. And at that time, if the plans change immensely, then we can
No,
relook at it.
So he builds his house. 5 years down the road, he decides he's gonna develop,
Then
Yes.
he
Then
puts
what
in an
happens?
application for.
and we start all over again.
Yes, but but Mr. Peters would have to replat the portion that he wanted to
Okay.
develop.
Yeah.
And that's what it kind of feels like, right? It's
Yeah.
big parcel, one house, with all due respect to Mr. Peters, it's like, okay, this may be a way of kind of circumnavigating other requirements that might be a requirement, but
Right.
it is allowable for people to avail themselves of the rules as they apply for
Right.
one house on a big lot, and we don't want to, apply different rules for what we might think Mr. Peters is trying to do,
Right,
rather
right.
than what he's doing, right?
I just want to make sure we're not doing anything that's set in stone.
Absolutely, and I think that.
That's all that
different-
really was the crux of my.
All the rules still apply according to the circumstance.
I think the whole thing boils down to is down the road, if things change, then he's gotta come before.
Then you gotta jump through the hoops again.
Gotta go through it all over
And
again.
everybody does what they want
The
there.
only question I have, Tim, is this, is that second parcel down there, that pie-shaped one, is how many acres?
9.5.
9.5 acres. I think somebody mentioned if somebody wanted to, whoever bought it wanted to subdivide it, go through the same process. One of the things, have you considered maybe doing an MOU with whoever purchased that property to bind them to anything? Okay,
Just haven't got that far. I'm looking
Okay.
for approval.
that's a thought.
Before I start.
That way it would allow whoever purchases it to know what the stipulations could be down the road.
They will be written into the deed restrictions and
Right.
or covenants of protected
Okay.
properties.
Okay.
Definitely.
That's a pretty nice, big piece of property, and I can understand you want to have a little bit of elbow room, so it's good.
Hey, I tried to create something through the years. I couldn't pull it off, so before I died, I'm
You
gonna
just
build
want
one house and I'm
to
gonna live.
move out of the mountains.
You know? Getting a little older, Phil.
I hear you.
So-
Any other questions? Okay, call the vote, please.
DeBono?
Yes.
Griego?
Yes.
Ogletree?
Yes.
Shu?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes.
Williamson?
Yes.
Rico?
Yes, thank you, Tim. Item 8D, consideration of La Puerta bid 2023 operating plan and proposed budget. Entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I guess Cheryl, what do you have?
The Business Improvement District statute requires La Puerta bid to submit their budget to the clerk by September 30th, and it was sent to Audra by September 30th. We've had a chance to go through it. This particular budget, they're starting to recognize their mill levy or their property taxes. They haven't done so. Well, they did so the very first year, I believe it was 2018, and then they've skipped every year since then. So they're starting to recognize that mill levy. And they also have $5 million projected in capital outlay. So it looks like that area is starting to get ready to get moving and going. So the capital outlay is for infrastructure improvements.
And there's no one here tonight from, because I did have a question.
Mr. Lamb's online.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. We're on with Tom George, who's our counsel.
Okay.
on the Great Business Improvement District.
Any questions?
Do y'all have questions? I had a couple questions. One of them was, and this may have to do with the mill levy thing that you're talking about, but in 2022, for this year, you had budgeted $50,000 in public improvement fees, but then the actual is blank and the estimated for 2022 is blank. And then again, you're budgeting $50,000 in 2023. Why was there no actual in 2022 reported?
I believe this is the result of developer funds that were used. And I don't believe that we got those fees in that we expected.
So those are fees that you are able to charge, like something having to do with.
Yes.
But those have not been charged at this point?
We did not receive them or collect them.
Okay. And then the other question I had is that last year I was able to sit through the city's audit, and I remember that our auditing team mentioned that they couldn't speak to the records regarding the BID because they didn't have access to them, and they suggested that the city, ask for whatever records of auditing that you all have. Do you all do your own audit?
We were exempt from the audit because we weren't getting revenues in. It was, I think we filed the exemption 2 years in a row, request for exemption.
Okay, when you get the revenues in, are you going to then be subject to audit?
Yes. We have a company that we have retained that's going to be doing all of our accounting, the collections, and keeping all the records, called Clifton Larson now.
Okay.
So they're working right now, setting up the books, setting up everything for it. For really 2023 is probably the first time we'll really get something sizable in. 2022 was pretty negligible.
Okay.
I can add to that. This is Tom George. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Sure. We're legal counsel of the bid, and I represent a number of business improvement districts around the state. And the bid as a local government is subject to the local government audit law, the same as any other district, school district, metro district, so forth. And there are dollar thresholds. In any year, the district's expenditures are less than $750,000. The district can apply to the state auditor's office for an exemption from audit. And then, in the last several years, has received that exemption from audit from the state auditor's office. So we anticipate the district will continue to apply for that, so long as the expenditures are below that threshold. If we exceed $750,000, you aren't even eligible for an exemption. You have to conduct an audit. So the bid would comply with that.
Thank you, Mr. George. That clears it up for me.
Any other questions? Okay. I did have a question. As you know, the new hotel, is that part of this district portion, or is that outside?
The hotel itself is outside. It's the public improvements around that is part of the business improvement district.
Okay.
So that hotel is probably financed and being built.
Okay. That was my question, is that...
Yeah, our contribution to Americana Road that's being built now by Purgatory Valley Construction would be part of the bid.
Because of the expansion of the properties out there, and it shows, it's always been known that you could possibly go to a bond, asking for a bond. Are you anywhere close to getting to that position yet, or is it still a ways off?
It's a ways off. We're more focused on building the hotel, getting the road in, and then we'll see where we're at, whether a bond is needed or even desired.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Do you have anything else that you want to add, Mr. Lamb, or?
No, we're just working diligently to get everything done. Hopefully the hotel, the road will all be done soon after the first of the year. We're hoping the hotel will be open by March. And we want to thank the city for its cooperation and all they've helped us with in getting that thing going.
I just want to thank, you and the organization for investing in the community and the way it's going, that we do greatly appreciate it. So, if there's no further questions, call a vote.
DeBono?
Yes.
Griego?
Yes.
Ogletree? Yes. Shu?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes.
Williamson?
Yes.
Rico?
Yes. Item 9, council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9, council reports, starting with Mr. DeBono.
Well, the Los Angeles County Veterans Council, they need help. They're gonna have a fundraiser to help pay for maintenance and utilities. It's gonna be next Thursday and Friday from 7 to 11. It's a Boo at the Woo is what they call it. It's a Fort Wooten haunted tour. And there's a costume ball, a Halloween costume contest, and all the public is invited. I mean, there is a fee for membership. If you're a member already, then it's free. $25 per family, $15 for individual, but it's pretty extensive the utilities and maintenance in that big vest. But a great place to have a haunted tour. I mean, that's, wow. Man, get lost in there.
Yeah.
And then the 11th, I think I mentioned last time, council reports, they're going to have that Kathy Williams fundraiser memorial statue, and that's Veterans Day, and that they're going to have the Capucci brothers there, and Haskell Hooks is kind of coordinating that, so that'll be kind of nice event as well. So a lot of events at Fort Wood Memorial Hall, Holloway Hall.
That's true.
Yeah.
Karen.
That's it.
Well, I'm a councilman without a board.
What do you mean?
Well,
Assign her.
I need to be assigned to a board, so Historic Main Street is, since they got a director, I haven't been notified of the meetings, so I'm out there, but I did volunteer to be the liaison for the tree board. I guess we'll have to make sure we put it on the agenda next time.
Well, the first one, if you're not getting notified, I think
No.
you need to contact whoever's the head of that to let her know that she needs to be
Yeah,
informed.
Mr. Gutierrez used to do that, and he's no longer attending those meetings, I believe. Since they hired a director, but anyway, I don't have access to their meetings, but I do have something to report.
Okay.
I'm not totally empty here. Amanda Korth from the chamber sent me an email there, and I think Mr. Ruger got it too. They're going to hold a seminar called a Convergence Seminar. I think it's a self-help, self-development seminar. I think I know there's a charge for it, but it's going to be Thursday, November 3rd at 2 o'clock at the Pioneer Room at Trinidad State College, and it's for leadership, people in executive positions, and I'm thinking I'm going to go and see if I'm not giving you 100% of the city council. If there's something I'm lacking that I can improve in, but I think it'd be worthwhile if other council members want to go. Just let me know and I'll forward you the link to register. And then I know you all got this, we got the email this afternoon, that Brett McGrath put a sticker on that NASCAR in Las Vegas.
That was cool.
That you talk about a great promotion.
Yeah, free advertising.
Yeah, that car had a huge Monument Lake sticker on it, and so did the helmet. I think, kudos to Mr. McGraw for trying to promote the lake and the community.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Nope, I have nothing to report on.
Arts and culture, that, as I mentioned, and they came up with their budget for next year. And the only reason I mentioned that is that I'm really proud of them because they are doing it in accordance with the master plan that they came up with. And so they're looking at each part of it and saying, okay, we need money for this and that. And I just really like seeing that. So.
They did a good job with that master plan, they really did.
Yep.
We had a meeting last night, Parks and Rec, and Mr. Gruber was there, so they were able to meet the new city manager, so looks like we're gonna get some headway. A lot of good questions were asked about, master plan, golf course, Fisher's Peak, improvements in the park areas, and, we also talked about, getting the homeless or transient thing kind of, and going in a direction for us, they have showers and whatnot at the community center, so, Mr. Rubin wanted to speak on that, he was there, so,
Mr. Mayor, yeah, no, I think that's a great update. We're also getting requests for third quarter marijuana from Parks and Rec for some of the projects they'd like to see done. So that was something else that they discussed last night as well.
I have no update.
Okay. Man, like I said, the Rat Fest occurred a couple of weeks ago. It was really a lot of fun. Had quite a few people here from all over the country again, and even from some other countries. So that was really good to see. It seemed like it turned out very well. I contacted Tamara afterwards, and she seemed to be very pleased with the outcome afterwards. So good to
Are
hear.
they coming back?
They're planning on coming back, so it's good to see. All these people are saying they're going to go back and spread the word. So that's all. Word of mouth is going to be what's going to grow this. I had asked somebody, the one in Leadville, how many bikers that they had up there this year. There's like 2,000 cycles up there in Leadville. So that one, of course, is huge.
How many years is that one?
I don't know how long it's been going on, but it's been a few years. But they have really, they really built that up. Yeah, they've done a good job. Like I said, just attended the tourism, and they continue to try to get the advertising, marketing outside of the area out there. So that's one good thing that to try to do. And I did mention to them what I think you had mentioned at our meeting last time, is that it's not the time to, if they can, to cut back.
All right.
They have a pretty good reserve amount. And so what they did is they dipped into some of the reserves to do some additional advertising, which that I thought was, again, I said, well, it's probably the time, because if there's anything that's going to increase is the marketing. It's going to increase our sales tax revenue is by, so so I think they're going to bring that revenue down. I can't remember down, because they had $300 and some thousand in reserve, and I think afterwards it's still going to be pretty sizable. So they're going to be able to use quite a bit of that.
That's
Attended the Vietnam Vets 50-year commemoration last week, and it's about the fifth one that I have attended. It was pretty interesting this time. There was one gentleman who received a pin, and it was very emotional for him. I was standing right there, because what it is, as they were giving him the pin, myself and the three commissioners were there, which, when it comes up again, I wish the council would go to these. They're really great. But anyway, this guy was actually, tears were coming down his eyes that he had received recognition, for, and what's really neat about that is there's the guy that does the presentation. They put a table in the middle of the room, and from the Vietnam War, and there's an empty chair. There's a candle, there's a cup that's turned upside down, and there's a couple of other things, and each one has a significance. And they go through that significance of what it is. And you listen to it, and it really is emotional to listen to what that is. And then, of course, they bring all the vets up, and they pin them and thank them for their service. So those are really, really cool. We had a mayor's meeting yesterday. I mentioned to you guys that we were talking about crime, and it's really a big deal. I have looked into some of the codes and the changes that have occurred in the last few years. And the ones that I have, there's about 700 pages, and it's quite extensive. And some of the changes that have occurred, some of them are the Constitution geared. Others, I think there's some changes that could happen. What ends up happening a lot of times, I think, is stuff is put together, given to the legislators up north. They don't give them the full information, so they go ahead and they pass it, And there's a lot of unintended consequences that come across, I think Mr. Downs could probably attest to that, that he sees. So it's going to be an ongoing conversation, just to let you know. I also attended the CML meeting, the first meeting the other day. Wanted to bring a couple of things to your attention that occurred. As we should know, or should now know, is that the outdoor dining and patio with the alcohol, it ends at the end of this year. So they are considering, there's going to possibly maybe a measure going to the legislators to continue that in the near future. So.
Meaning the COVID provisions, Mayor?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
Thank you for
sir.
clarifying that. So, they're considering that. It says this way, it says, now that emergency rules are ending, there is a lack of clarification and consistent interpretation of liquor rule 47-3027, which addresses public through fair. So they're going to bring that, I guess, up. And the other thing that was of there was a lot of it, talk about this was they know, and you probably see it, that people in this state are very underinsured in their homes.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And so I'm not sure what they're going to do about it, but they're talking about, it says the language be added to the CML policy statement to support legislation that addresses underinsurance issues. So there's some stuff that they're recommending. They also talked about the uniform sales and use tax on construction materials. And I informed them that the city of Trinidad tried the use tax several years ago. I mean, this is way before my time here on this dais. And there was a lot of pushback from the contractors, and I informed them that you try to do something with a use tax across the board, and one size fits all doesn't work. And they're going to get a lot of pushback from the construction industry and construction organizations. So it's going to be. They also talked about electronic sales and use tax simplification systems. Also an automated vehicle identification system that they're talking about. They're talking about the red light and speed enforcement cameras, that type of thing. Yeah. They're also talking about doing there was some information about housing on land use and zoning regulations. So they're going to tap into that again. And that happens probably every legislative session, that they start looking at zoning laws and changes. This one didn't make sense to me. They want to introduce something about natural sources and environment, ditch burning on red flag days to allow a municipality or county to ban it. And I said, well, that should be automatic. It doesn't make sense. I mean, if it's windy, why would you, all the county has to do is say, we're going to ban burning. They do that now. So why do we want legislation? It didn't make sense. They also talked about wildfire resiliency code board. He talked about wanting to harden homes to prevent from fires. And I brought a thing and I said, there is nothing other than if you put solid concrete walls and solid concrete roofs that you're going to prevent fires, and especially in out areas, and it didn't make sense. They also, and this is another thing they wanted, wildfire evacuation and clearance time modeling. And there again, I brought it up and I said, every county has to have an emergency management plan in place. This county does. And so why do they need to impose more legislation if they already have an emergency plan that they're supposed to have? Why introduce more legislation? It didn't make sense. So those are some of the things that we talked about. I'm sure there's going to be more coming. Next meeting that we will have is December the 2nd. We'll see how much more legislation comes forward by that time, because usually they'll get about 500 bills that they've got to go through by the time the legislative session is over, so it's a mess. That's all I have. Mr. Ruger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I just have a few items for you tonight. So first, I wanted to give you an update on our sidewalk program. So it is tremendously successful. So I want to thank the mayor and council for implementing that program. Right now, we have about $10,000 left out of the 75 originally allocated, and we're getting applications in left and right. So it's very competitive right now. So it's really good to see that program work and see some of our sidewalks get improved. I wanted to mention, I met with Michael Yerman from My Rural Planner today, and we talked a little about his scope of services. His contract contemplates doing some GIS work for us, but we're just not there with GIS. So we're going to reallocate some of the money on his contract to ensure that we have a properly updated zoning map. So we will get that going so that we have an updated zoning map and make sure that it's correct and get it in place and get it up on our website so we have that document available to our residents. I wanted to also really thank our dispatch workers. They've been putting in a lot of extra hours. They've not been taking vacation because of short staff and some time that other people are taking for medical issues over there. And so they've really stepped up. And I just wanted to give them a public acknowledgement that we really appreciate what they do. It's one of the toughest jobs that anyone can have. And really appreciate them hanging in there and doing what they can to support and make sure that that function operates seamlessly. And then last thing I have, just a reminder, our work session on the 24th will begin at 3 p.m. Heavy agenda there, and we're looking forward to bringing some great topics for you to consider.
We do have one additional thing.
Sure.
I think Cheryl's still here. One thing that I noticed, I think it was the fire department, that there was overtime in the amount of $39,000.
Yeah,
What happened?
they're short-staffed.
Yeah, but $39,000 in overtime?
They don't do payroll.
They were deployed for
What?
Yeah, we get reimbursed all of that money.
Oh, we do? Okay. I was just kind of wondering, I mean, that stood out, and I said, wow, that was almost equal to the
Yeah,
amount of the
that was
regular
pretty
payroll.
Yeah, I didn't understand, I didn't hear her answer. What did she say?
They get reimbursed.
They get reimbursed for the while, because they were.
Okay, got it.
There's a couple other items, but I'll talk about those. I'll call you on them.
And Mr. Mayor, I apologize. One more thing I forgot on the sidewalk update. I did want to also thank our public works staff, particularly Jenny Jackson, who's been working tirelessly to get the sidewalk agreements in place and really has stepped up and done a great job. So I wanted to acknowledge the work that our city staff is doing on that program as well.
Okay. Mr. Downs?
No report.
No report?
Councilmembers.
All right.
I'm mentally preparing myself for the executive.
Okay, on to item 11, executive session. 11A for a conference with the city's attorney for a conference of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS Section 24-6-4024B, municipal property. Item B for discussion of a personnel matter under CRS Section 24-6-4022F, and not involving any specific employees who have requested discussion of the matter in open session, any member of this body or any elected official, the appointment of any person to fill an office of this body or of any elected official, or personnel policies that do not require the discussion of matters personal to particular employees, city attorney performance reviews. Motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on it? Call vote, please.
DeBono?
Yes.
Griego?
Yes.
Ogletree? Yes. Shu?
Yes.
Thurman?
Yes.
Williamson?
Yes.
Rico?
Yes. Let's go ahead and take about 5 minutes or so to, there's nothing that's going to happen afterwards?
No.
Okay.